Are you This open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee Facility Subcommittee is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020 in response to the COVID pandemic enacted into law, Section 20, Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and the provisions extended through March 31st, 2025 by the fiscal year 2023 supplemental budget signed by Governor Healy on March 29th, 2023. These provisions suspend the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order the meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee Facility Subcommittee on Thursday, November 14th at 1:04 p.m. I am Matthew Landers, the chair of the Facility Subcommittee. I'd like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Caitlin.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Narissa.
I am here and I can hear you.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Brian.
Here and I can hear you.
Sorry. John Skonecki.
Here and I can hear you.
Brian Perry.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Patrick Kelly.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Alan McRae.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Town officials. Alicia.
I'm here and I can hear you.
And Neil Harrington. Salisbury.
I'm here, I can hear you.
And Habib, Kevin.
Hi, I'm here and I can hear you.
And is Julia on?
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
I'm here and I can hear you.
I think that's everyone, right?
I believe you got, I'm just looking around the screen. I believe you got everyone. Yes.
For this meeting, the Triton Regional School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom using the information posted on the district's website, identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you're not speaking. All supporting material that have been provided to the members of the body are available on the district website with the agenda posting, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Each vote taken at this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We don't have anyone from the public, right?
I do not see anyone. Nope.
Okay. First item is the minutes approval. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from October 15th?
I will make the motion.
Second.
Roll call vote. Narissa?
Yep.
Caitlin?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Next item is the continuing to develop building options.
So I'll just do a quick introduction, then hand this over to Kevin and or Julia. So just as a reminder, probably more for those who might be watching this than those who are currently on this call and have been part of these discussions. The task at hand, I've actually been receiving more questions from the public at large, kind of what the thinking and the plans are. Just to reiterate that the exercise here is coming up with a plan B. If, again, the genesis of which was if we hear no from the MSBA later this month, more like very early next month. This exercise is not exploring all the options that we would if we were in partnership with the MSBA, right? We're not looking at a knockdown rebuild. We're not looking at a total gut and redo like a Pine Grove. This is looking at, okay, what could we do separate another, ignoring MSBA, minimum square footage for classroom spaces and ignoring the fact that they would never participate in renovating 2 gyms because 1 gym would be fine for this campus. So all of those things aside, looking at the space, what can we do to improve it, i.e. flow, safety, 1 access point, as well as general flow of the building and making sure the building is brought into 2025 with a 50-year solution. So just want to make sure it's clear. This is not Pine Grove School, right? The plan that we're looking at today is not a Pine Grove School where everything was taken back literally to structural steel and concrete, every pipe, electric service, everything. Building a street on in is brand new. That is not this. This is, as Kevin will walk us through, this is addressing the issues we've talked about through renovations, updating all of the building envelope and mechanicals, and then updating as existing conditions through the rest of the building. So it's in a classroom that exists at 748 square feet right now. That classroom, if it's not color coded here, stays 748 square feet, the exact same configuration. Walls get painted, new ceilings and lights, new flooring, new windows. So it feels like a fresh new space, and we could change orientation and, boards and, equipment and things. But largely that 747 square foot classroom remains the exact same configuration if it's not otherwise called out. So just to make sure that everyone's clear about what this exercise is and what the numbers mean and what they don't mean. So with that, unless anyone else has another clarification to make, I'm going to bat this over to Kevin. I did send this out to you via email about 45 minutes ago. Again, we had said it's going to be a tight crunch getting to this meeting, but we said let's definitely look at something mid-November. That gives us another month if we want to make tweaks to presentation or thoughts or questions that need to be answered. That gives us more time before we get to that December deadline we had given ourselves to make sure we have the data we need to make a determination for next steps. So with that, I'm not seeing any hands. I'm going to pass it over to Kevin and Julia.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to do a screen share.
Oh, sorry. I'm a
I'm not
control
sure that I
freak.
have the ability to do that quite yet.
Now you do.
Okay. Okay, should see my screen now.
We do.
Okay, great. So I'll just do a quick recap of the design, and then we'll get into talking about the estimate in a little bit more detail. The design option 7, which we looked at together the last time that we met, has been updated a bit. Conceptually, it's identical to what we looked at before. We're calling this option 7.1. It's just got some refinements in it that I think right size some of the new spaces that we were considering. And in particular, I'm talking about this lobby space and this administration addition here, this part being 2 stories, the lobby being 1. And I think once we started to work on the estimate, we need to assign some floor area to the different parts of the project. And I think we were a little bit oversized on the lobby and a little bit undersized on the administration addition. And so we've made some adjustments to some more appropriate floor areas. Conceptually, it's the same. The adjacencies are the same. I think this is the right fit for this project. So I just wanted to let you know that we've done that. And the other thing you're going to see that might look new is we've identified some science labs or science classrooms that were undersized. And early on in our discussion, we had talked about that, and we didn't want to lose track of it. We haven't spoken about it for a while, but some reconfiguration of the science labs, I think, would be part of this project, because I think what we had concluded is that they were very much undersized, and there were a lot of concerns about that. So on the color code legend, science is red, and you'll see those rooms here that are highlighted in red on the plans. And these were the science labs that were less than the recommended standard, which was 1,440 square feet, I believe. So we haven't designed any new laboratories. We would need some additional area to do that. We haven't done that as part of this exercise. So what you'll see represented here are the existing footprints, but just be mindful that the costs for renovating these science labs or science classrooms would be included in the estimate. So it's just something I want to point out. I'm not going to spend any more time on any of the other parts of the design because we've looked at that together, and conceptually it's the same as it was before. So
Kevin, are you talking about
yes.
with the renovation of those labs, new square footage, or are you talking about having taking square footage from other classrooms that are currently?
We're talking about taking square footage from somewhere else.
Okay.
So we're not adding any additional area to the building footprint for the science classrooms, but we know that in the aggregate, if we look at the total area of the building, that, you know, we have underutilized space and the building is oversized and has excess capacity. Okay. So we would have to borrow some area from somewhere else in order to do those science lab renovations. And that's just, it's beyond the scope of the exercise that we're doing now. So I just wanted to be clear that we haven't actually designed anything for that.
All right, thank you.
But I think we've accommodated it in the budgeting. So I'm gonna jump over to the cost estimate. This is new information. There's some basic project data up here, which describes the existing gross area of the building, 286,000 square feet. The additions that we've designed in option 7.1, including the two-story part for the administration, is totals of 13,000 square feet. Come on in. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, sorry about that. Just waiting for something. So that gives us a total gross area of about 300,000 square feet altogether. And with the costs that we've generated here, the proposed cost per square foot is about $334 a square foot. And I'll walk you through as to how we arrived at that. But you may look at that number and think that that number looks low. You know, we've tossed around the number $1,000 a square foot for new school construction. But the reality is I think that when we, you know, mine through the data that's available from recent MSBA core projects, which would be, you know, similar to this project, what we found is that number was really much too high and is the exception. So what we saw for core projects in the additions and renovation category. So there's that category, and then there's new construction. But in the addition and renovation, we saw ranges of $450 to maybe $850 a square foot. We're below that, but you know, as Brian had described earlier, we're really not reconfiguring a lot of space here. So we're working for the most part with the building layout as it exists. We're not planning on doing a complete gut where we take down all of the interior walls and we reshape the building completely. That's not what we're doing here. So I think that this number is fair for the scope of work here that we're proposing. So this worksheet is what we call a total project budget. And the cost of construction is only one component of a project. And you'll see that here in the middle. Cost of construction is estimated at almost $109 million. But there are other costs, soft costs, fees, contingencies that we want to make sure that we identify and keep track of, because it adds quite a bit to the cost of the project. And these are typical costs that we might expect to see of a project of this type. Some of them are optional, depending on, you know, what type of procurement path we might choose. The basic options are construction manager at risk or a bid. If it were construction manager at risk, we've added something here for that budget, and that's basically the fee that is paid to the construction manager to bring them onto the project and work directly with them to develop a construction cost, and that's done with the district and the design team together at the schematic design level. But there is a fee associated with that. There are some basic administration costs that the district would incur. Builder's risk is something that is not always required, but is something that should be considered. This is insurance that could be taken on the project. And an example might be if the project had a very tight schedule, for example, and we needed to rent some modular classrooms, for temporary classrooms, and there was some risk that the project may not be completed on time, and there might be some additional costs there to continue to rent those modulars. That's something that we might want to insure, and there are other scenarios as well, but and that's not mandatory. There will be an owner's project manager. Any project that exceeds $1.5 million in value under Chapter 149 requires an OPM. And so there's a fee associated with their services. And the owner's project manager is a consultant that's brought onto the team who works for the district. And they'll be involved throughout the entire process from beginning to end. Architecture and engineering are the design fees paid to the design team. The cost of construction here, we mentioned that. We put something in here for modular classrooms, anticipating that this project would most likely be phased because of the need to keep the school operating during the construction period. And we haven't looked in any detail as to how that might be accomplished, but I think it's safe to say that we would need some temporary accommodations for classrooms somewhere on the site. So there's a cost for that. And then there's other costs like paying the gas and electric bill, during construction. If we need those modular classrooms, they need utilities as well. We'll be hiring movers. There'll be testing and inspection costs throughout the construction that the owner typically pays. FF&E is short for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So this is all of the non-building items that we need to fit up the project, and it's furnishings, it's classroom furnishings, it's office furnishings, equipment that we might need for shop spaces. It's all of the IT technology, the computers, the servers, the Wi-Fi, teaching technology, might be a smart board or some other device that we want to buy for the classroom. And then finally, we've got some contingencies, a design contingency and a construction contingency at 10% each. These are all percentages of the cost of construction, by the way, if that's not apparent. So we start with the cost of construction, and then we take percentages of that to come up with these other items. And these, of course, are all, all estimates. But the contingencies is money that we add on top of our costs to account for the level of development of the project. So if this is a project, we're very, very early here in the development. This is really a conceptual stage of development. And so it could go in a lot of different directions, and we want to make sure that we budget for things that might change in the design. and also things that might change during construction, unforeseen conditions, change orders, added scope. So that's 20% altogether, and I think that that's appropriate for this stage of the project. As the project gets closer and closer to its final design and estimate, those contingency numbers will drop because we know with more certainty what it is that we're going to build and how much it's going to cost. So if we sum everything together with our construction and all of our soft costs and other costs, we arrive at a total project budget of $152 million.
Can I just pause there before you go on and just say one more
Of
time?
course,
Like we're, again, continue to remind everyone that this is conceptual. We're now talking line item detail. And Kevin will go over the coming pages and talk about specifically how we derive those numbers. But this is not a proposal, a proposed budget. This is not a schematic design. This is not a plan. This is us getting to the point of a conceptual, can we make a go of a project outside of the MSBA? That's the question to answer. So that's the purpose of this, is making assumptions, sometimes very high level, large assumptions like 20% contingency for design and construction is very high, but that's the level, the lack of detail we have right now that would feed into this, trying to get not a worst case scenario, but a kind of a high ballpark of what a project like this would cost. So just going to keep pausing and reiterating that this is not a proposal. Anyone watching this after the fact should not expect to see these figures coming before anyone for approval or further discussion, other than as a talking point at this point.
the way that I like to think about it is this is not what the project will cost, but it's what it could cost. Okay. So I've got some more detail that I'd like to show you. So we have a deeper dive, if you will, into design option 7, and there's a couple of pages here of information, and we're not going to go through this line by line, but I can try to explain how we do this conceptual estimating. And what you'll see here on these worksheets is all of the work that we identified together, working on design option 7, has been broken down into each space that either we need to renovate, change the use of, or build in addition. And it's broken down by what level of the building it's on. So here at the ground level, all of the work that's been proposed at the ground level is a renovation of existing space. So this is a descriptor that talks about what type of work that is. We go upstairs to the main level. We have some more work here where we're renovating existing spaces. We have a small addition here that we've proposed to build. And then if we go to the upper level of the building, we have more spaces here that we've proposed to renovate. So each one of those spaces has an area associated with it, and that is in square feet. So we count this up, we do the arithmetic, we arrived at a total gross square foot area, and then we assign what we call a unit cost. And that is the cost per square foot that we would expect to need in order to build this space or to do this work. And it ranges quite a bit depending on if it's a simple renovation, could be a more complicated renovation, or it could be an addition, which would have the highest cost per square foot because we're building it, right from the ground. So we get some totals, and we sum all of the work together. And we arrive at a subtotal for design option 7. Now, there's a few things here in this design option that I don't think we've talked about as a group, but we've added here because we think it's the sensible thing to do, knowing what other needs there are. And we thought it was important to show that here in the breakdown so that it was clear how we arrived at these totals. So this category here is the outbuilding, and the last time that we met, we had talked about a potential scope of work to renovate that building so that we can have the team rooms. We're going to upgrade the toilet rooms, and I think we've proposed actually here to add a couple toilet rooms, one for each classroom, and the other 2 toilet rooms would be the public rooms that face the exterior. So that work is estimated at $760,000 to renovate the outbuilding. And then we've added another section here to do some work on the athletic fields. We're proposing to replace the turf field and the track. The tennis courts would need to be rebuilt. And I understand that there are some issues with grading and drainage on the baseball field as well that we would want to correct. And so we've added a cost for that as well. So the work outside of the building in the athletic fields, we've estimated that at $4.56 million.
Can I just jump in on that?
Yes, of course.
Because I know we keep talking about this for the project. We did the stadium. We don't need to do anything else with it. We're good to go. We had talked about updating originally when the stadium was built in 2016. So it's a decade, almost a decade old already. And in a matter of a couple of years of project, we're beyond a decade. We knew we would have to eventually replace the surface of the track and the carpet for the field itself, for the turf itself. I think that 1.97 is a much larger number than we would actually need, because the hope is everything else, the construction or the concrete base and drainage and all that is good. Maybe we need half of that to just replace the carpet. So there could potentially be money available for other improvements on the fields as well. Again, good example of high level. Again, I don't think the track would be 1.6 either, because I think the paving is all in great shape. It's the sprayed on, I forget what it was, polyurethane, whatever, the bouncy surface and the painting and striping. The idea here is there's a $4.5 million placeholder to address athletic needs. The big ones is the carpet, the track surface, the tennis courts that just love moving all over the place and cracking, and the baseball field that depends on the day, whether it's underwater or not. There are needs on the softball fields and the soccer fields and other fields as well. This was just a way of capturing, not again, detailed needs, but a placeholder in an assumed overall project.
Yep. Thank you. So if we take all of this work in the aggregate, playing field work, the outbuilding, and the work that we described in design option 7, we can total that up and we arrive here at almost 30 million. So where does all the rest of the cost of construction come from? So this breakdown really only addresses the design option renovations and addition that we've worked on together. But there's all of the other work that would happen elsewhere in the building to bring the building up to the 21st century. And so we don't have detailed breakdowns for these in the presentation, but I can tell you, if you're familiar with the facilities condition assessment that we worked on a few years back, and the final iteration of that I think was in 2021, that formed the basis for coming up with these estimated numbers. So we took another look at the scope of work that we had identified then, but that scope of work really only addressed obvious and deficiencies that needed repair or replacement. And what we're talking about now is a scope of work that's significantly beyond that. So these numbers have grown quite a bit from where they were when we did the condition assessment. The condition assessment really isn't intended to renovate every square foot of a building. It's really intended just to identify the deficiencies, right? So this takes it a step beyond that. So there are additional costs in all of these categories so that we can extend this work throughout the building wherever it's needed. There'll be some work that we'll want to do on the site outside the building, and these are the areas outside of the athletic fields. So these are the bituminous concrete parking lots, driveways, concrete sidewalks, curbs, landscaping, trees, chain link fencing. There's a few things that would fall into this bucket. The building envelope, I think the item there that adds the most cost is that we're all familiar with is the windows. So this number would include replacement of all of the windows. So the original windows with the steel frames and the aluminum windows that were put in the 1999 edition. And it includes some other budget as well to do some masonry repairs and to replace some brick masonry on the addition that has shown to be an ongoing water infiltration issue. We have some wet walls that are not drying out, and that's a problem that we need to fix. So we've got some money in there for that. Interior renovations are mostly finishes, the new flooring material, the paint on the walls, the new ceilings throughout. Plumbing, I think, is fairly straightforward. It would include replacement of all the plumbing fixtures, of course, but also the piping that's associated with the plumbing. So all of the hot and cold domestic water supply, the sanitary drains, and in the older part of the building in particular, that piping is at an age where we would expect it to start failing. We would expect to start seeing leaks. And for a renovation on this scale, it's highly recommended that all of that piping be replaced while the building is open, while we have the opportunity to open up walls, to saw cut floors, to pull out sanitary drains, to take down ceilings, to work on piping. That's the right time to do it. Fire protection systems is changing the distribution piping on the sprinklers. HVAC system is a replacement of the system throughout. And so that's new unit heaters, new boilers, new distribution piping. And electrical is lighting, power. The electric switchgear to the building is original equipment. It's very old and is always at risk of failing. And if your switch fails, you have no power. And that unless you have a extended backup power supply, that could potentially be a very big problem. So when we add all of these together, that brings us to 67 million, and then we add the $30 million or so from design option 7, and in the aggregate that brings us to $96 million. Those are today's dollars, and we need to be mindful that we can expect costs to escalate between now and the time when this project would be bid. And typically that's been 4% per year. In the years during and immediately after COVID, that number was is 6% and beyond in some cases, but it seems to be coming back down. So 4% seems reasonable, but considering that we're almost in 2025, it could take a year or so, to approve funding, another year for design. And, we would want to start construction during the summer immediately following the end of the school year in 2027. So that escalation brings us to that point in time. And that's closer to $109 million. So this is the cost of construction. And then just to recap, if we go back here to our total project budget estimate, here's that 109 million right here, the cost of construction, and then all of the soft costs and administration cost contingencies, FF&E, and so forth. It's all added to that, and that brings us to a number for total project budget. So there's a lot here. There's a lot of new information. I don't know if I need to say anything more right now, unless Brian, you think that there's something else here that we need to point out, or if we have questions.
Yeah, no, I think from my perspective, we went over it in great detail. Appreciate that. I think obviously it's hearing from the group, from the committee, about Rhett, I guess my thinking, here's my thoughts on the way this exercise is productive, is we can certainly pull things up, right? We can refine a budget. I think the more important thing is getting a concept, again, this is a concept, not a budget, not a plan, not a proposal, getting a concept and a rough budget that and saying, yes, this meets the needs and this would be an acceptable plan if we moved forward with this, or it's missing something. So I think that's the first question is, do we believe this addresses the things we want it to address as far as concepts? And would this be a viable option, regardless of what we hear from the MSBA? But as a decision point, does this present to us a viable option, or are there still things that we believe this doesn't accomplish? Ready, go.
Quick question, are we doing anything with the wastewater?
That's a great question. That I forgot to ask that. I
Yeah.
thought about that yesterday, Kevin. Is that included in the plumbing?
We did, it's included. I don't, yes, that would be in the plumbing category. We did include something for that. I don't have that data right here in front of me, but we didn't forget about it, but we really don't know, the extent of the work there that's required, because we really never looked at it from the engineering perspective, but we did have something in there to add some capacity to the sewage disposal system.
And the scope change on the fire protection between the facilities assessment and current is you're going to change out all the piping?
It's mostly changing out piping and sprinkler heads, and whatever redistribution of sprinklers is required for spaces that we've reconfigured or added to the building.
How come the electrical seems to have gone down?
Well, if you compare it to the facilities condition assessment, you might see that, and the reason why is the assessment takes an estimated cost of construction, and we put 30% on top of that for soft costs. So in some cases, that number from that report could be higher than what we're reporting here, right here. But those soft costs are still captured. I mean, that's all of this other stuff. And if you were to look at these, percentages, you would find that this is roughly 30%. So it's still in there. It's just presented in a different way, if that makes sense, John.
It makes sense. It's just everything else went up on the hard cost, but that went down. So it's a little, is there anything taken out of the scope or?
No,
Okay.
no. And I'm sorry, I was looking at the other side of my screen here, Matt. I apologize.
That's fine. No problem. I've been called worse. No, I think it's good. I mean, I think we can sit here and pick apart the cost, for hours, and I don't think we're at that stage. I think it's a good number to start with. Hopefully it will go down a little bit.
Yeah, I think to reiterate, right, this is only renovating areas that are called out on those plans. Everything else is getting a facelift. So paint, ceilings, flooring, right, finishings, windows, roofs, doors. I meant to ask, does this assume, when we were talking yesterday, for HVAC, currently we have largely unconditioned classroom spaces?
Mhm.
This is replacing existing systems with unit ventilators in the classrooms and heating, or is there any cooling?
Cooling would be added. We would replace the unit ventilators, but we would add cooling to that and the additional piping that's required for the cooling. And I would expect that, a chiller would also be required.
Okay.
And all of that, I think we've captured that.
Okay. So all conditioning is through unit ventilators, not ducting or other forced out air or cooler.
We're always going to have ductwork for ventilation, air, and other parts of the building that do not have unit ventilators. So unit ventilators are really, for the most part, in the classrooms.
Yep.
And the ventilator, the name is self-explanatory. It brings in ventilation air directly from the outside, because we have a higher ventilation loads in classrooms than we have in other types of spaces. But so that's the long answer to the question. But air conditioning, I think, has been assumed in all of the classroom office spaces, almost everywhere.
Okay.
Auditorium.
Yes.
Probably one of the easier places. Who's here? I see Alicia's hand. You can just go ahead and
Oh, yeah.
call. You don't have to.
I don't know if I have to.
Can you hear us, Alicia?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay. I want to lower my hand. I understand what you're saying, how this is a conceptual and the numbers, it's just a talking point. They will change. I just have a question, and I have no problem with the estimates. I just have a question about the process a little bit. So as the MSBA meets in December.
Yep.
Let's say they don't invite us in. What is the thought? Let's just say this project, for this sake of discussion, goes forward, okay? This will replace the need to go with the MSBA. In other words, what I'm trying to understand and try to get you to say and articulate, I guess, is it's this or that. It's not this, then that.
Correct. Yeah. Good clarification. So yeah, so the paths moving forward, as far as timelines, I'll probably get a call the first week of December from the MSBA to give us a heads up of what their recommendation will be. That formal recommendation is happening on Friday, the 13th of December at their board meeting. So we won't know anything publicly. You'll all know because I'll tell you, but we're not publicly broadcasting that decision until the 13th when it's made public by the MSBA. We then will hear one of two things. Yes, you're welcomed in. No, you're not. The committee will then take that information along with the work that we're doing here, and in January take up the discussion because their meeting happens 2 days before the MSBA board meeting. Take up the discussion in January about how they want to proceed. Right. So the possible scenarios are, we want to, we heard no, so that's one path. So this is the only plan forward. We heard yes, and we still want to go with this plan because we believe this is a better and more viable option for a host of reasons. Or the third possibility is we got a yes from the MSBA and we're going to participate. We're going to go into feasibility. If we say yes to if they welcome us in and we say yes, this isn't for naught, right? This wasn't wasted time and energy, because I believe there's a path for us to consider this work in the process. But by design, accepting a welcome into the core program requires us to study all the possibilities, knockdown, rebuild, renovation, and what have you. That would be the discussion that would be first held by the school committee in January. My guess is either way, it's going to be a multiple discussion, whether that's at regular monthly meetings or there's other meetings scheduled for the committee to discuss, because this is complicated, right? There isn't a clear path to knock down, rebuild being the easiest solution. There's a renovation, what we're talking about here. But if we were to partner, as an example, if we were to partner with the MSBA, they would not participate in any of the Kevin, if you can scroll to one of the floors, maybe the main floor. Yeah, right there. Perfect. Right. So they would, all of the uncoded, uncolored aspects of this building, if those spaces, if those classrooms, the majority of those are classrooms, don't meet the MSBA guideline of, call it roughly 800 some odd square feet for a classroom, they will not reimburse us to renovate that space as is. So if we have a classroom at 775 square feet and we think that's okay, then the cost will completely be borne on us to renovate it because the MSBA says it has to be a minimum. The two gymnasiums, I would be shocked if they would ever approve a school project if we were rebuilding where they would give us two gyms for 850 students on a single campus. So there are, right, there's the value add of partnering with the MSBA of, hey, they're going to give us, again, roughly 50% of eligible costs, but that delineation of eligible costs will be really challenging on a renovated space like this, because many of the spaces won't meet those guidelines. And they're going to say, great, that's part of the project. That part is fully reimbursable. I'm sorry, fully not reimbursable. And when they do a project like this, they literally work through all the spaces and you can see reimbursable, not reimbursable, reimbursable, not reimbursable. So there could be a project where we participate with them. And rather than it being a 50-50 share, even though they said they're spending 50 or paying 50% of eligible costs, they paid 25% of the total project because a lot of the spaces were not reimbursable. So there's lots of nuances to the decision to be made. At a very high level, we've said from the get-go, we believe a renovation is the right path here. The MSBA likes renovations. I will say we had a former designer from Pine Grove reach out to us to tour the school because they're looking for a renovation. And it's so rare to find a renovation that the MSBA is partnered with because of that very reason, that more often than not, it ends up being more cost effective to just start from scratch if you're going to make every space reimbursable and meeting MSBA guidelines. Long answer to a short question, Alicia, but the direct answer is the path is either or. We won't be doing this and an MSBA project. We will be deciding whether to partner with the MSBA if they welcome us in, or go on our own, whether it's with or without an MSBA approval.
Okay, are you aware of any of your classroom spaces not meeting that standard?
The majority of them. Yeah,
Most
so
of them,
on that screen
yeah.
currently, like if you look up to the right of the high school media, kind of take that swath. Yep. Those on the outside, I think, are probably a little larger, but kind of that midsection to the left.
Yeah,
Yeah, kind of right
I
through
think
there.
you might remember when we started this process, we started with a space needs assessment even before we
Right.
started talking about design. And I think the average, Julia, was about 750 square feet. And the high school MSBA standard was between 850 and 950. So almost every classroom was deficient, by the MSBA standard. But 750 square feet is still a pretty good sized classroom. I mean, it's not something that is of concern, for us. It just doesn't meet the space standard. And so it would not be eligible for reimbursement, as Brian described, under the MSBA's core program.
That core program is due for some updates in their assumptions. I was visiting Wakefield Middle School with a bunch of music teachers on Tuesday, and that building was redone 9-10 years ago. I believe it was 2015, 2014. And all of the hallways are lined with risers for chorus and storage of instruments, because the MSBA doesn't understand storage needs. And most districts, right, do everything to make sure the project is fully reimbursable. And in doing so, you end up neglecting things like larger gyms, larger cafeterias. Their cafeteria is tiny, and there's 1,150 kids in the middle school, 5 through 8. So like the size of our cafeteria, according to if we were rebuilding that per DESI standards, would shrink considerably. And you end up having to do, rather than being able to have 1 or 2 seatings for a school or grade level, you end up having that stacked seating upon seating upon seating. So there's, right, it's hard to look at the MSBA and say, we don't want your money. But there are considerable, when we look at this square footage that's on this campus and what it affords, doing a local project gives us much more ability to right, go after other national grid incentives or other funding possibilities and control the decision. Again, I'll go back to the gyms. There's no way they would participate in renovating 2 gyms. That is an incredible asset on this campus, to have 2 distinct gym spaces, whether that be during the day use or right for all of our youth basketball leagues that own our gyms from November through March. And we can have, our youth programs in there on one side and our, high school programs on the other side, or what have you. So, or an auditorium that seats 800 would not happen on a campus that currently houses 850 students. So.
Just for comparison, I believe the gymnasium, a reimbursable gymnasium under the core program is 6,000 square feet. So just for comparison, this lobby is 6,000 square feet. And you can see how much extra room is available here in the gymnasiums, which is a great amenity to have. And that's something that they would not pay for.
Thank you.
Do you have any guess what a renovation to the MSBA standards would cost?
I would guess, I can only guess that it would push it closer to, it might be $850 a square foot.
And I think we would end up, right, paying fully for spaces that so again, so the first thing they do is we would agree a design enrollment, right? And so it's a 10-year look forward. It's an agreement, but they give you the number and you're stuck with it. So that enrollment then drives everything. So with an enrollment of 850 students, they would likely participate in again, I'm using Pentucket as a model, very similar enrollment and size, a 200,000 square foot building. So rather than here where we're looking at adding, what was it, 13,000 square feet for kind of a refined, secure flow entry, we would have to find 86,000 square feet to lose.
That's right.
Or just pay for it on our own for that portion, right? So then it becomes a complicated mix of, all right, these portions are reimbursable, these portions are not reimbursable. And that would be, right, so I was, my first step, if we were to hear yes from the MSBA, my first step is to get a meeting with Diane Sullivan, who is the woman who controls this portion of the program, and Mary Piketty, who's the executive director, to come in and meet with us to kind of just talk through what the potential logistics are about a core program that is a real mix of MSBA funding for portions, us totally paying for portions. The value now is if you partner with the MSBA, say we got, making this up, $15 million through National Grid reimbursements because we chose a specific technology for lighting or heating or such. We can use that money and MSBA money. Previously, it used to be that any other funding, private, venture, whatever, offset the MSBA's contribution to the project. Now it offsets our contribution to the project. So there is still a path that would make sense to partner with the MSBA. There's a lot of logistics and currently Kevin's got this modeled out. Construction started by 27 and completed by 29. We'd be hard pressed. We'd be hard pressed to get an MSBA project in that same timeline.
So you would have to add escalation, which is probably another 8% compounded.
Yeah,
Or-
you'd be adding compounded escalation, time to the schedule, and obviously the costs, cost per square foot goes up.
And just the maintenance and repairs we're going to keep paying, right? When we spent how much on the roof, over 100,000 in leaks, and all this money that we're spending to repair things that we know are not. There is no fix. It's a replacement, right? The roof is a good example of that.
So not that,
yeah.
sorry, not that we have the space to do it, but if we were looking at a new building, you're probably in the 300 million range.
It potentially, yeah. I'm trying to think of the Doherty High School in Worcester, which is a project that I'm familiar with, just opened in September, significantly bigger than this one, but that was about 290 million. So I think probably a new building of this size would be less than that. I would say north of 200, but less than 300.
Well, I think Wakefield's coming in at 280, similar size.
How big is it?
261, if I'm going off the top of my head.
The bid.
No, 261,000 square feet.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And it's coming up at 280 million.
Yeah. Again, going back to rough figures, right? Call that roughly 1,000 a square foot all in. And that doesn't mean the construction is 1,000 a square foot, but a base assumption. Again, using Pentucket as a size comparison for us enrollment wise, and layout 7, 8 middle school, 9 through 12 high school. If we had a 200,000 square foot building, you're talking roughly $200 million. The vast majority of that would then be a reimbursable, but we would have a significantly smaller auditorium. We would have one smaller gym, and so forth.
So you think you'll only be certified for 200,000 square feet?
I do. I think, right. And Pine Grove was certified for 63,000 square feet, and we kept it at 91 because of that anomaly program we had for the year, the limited scope repair. But other than that, they look at it is just a formula. That's all it is, right? It is just a prescribed. You have this many students. We agree a 10-year projection of what that would potentially and likely look like. And they back into it from there. So classroom spaces would likely, literal classrooms, a typical classroom would likely be larger, but we would lose a lot of the extra spaces that we have. And I don't think I'd be shocked. Unless we could show that there's a potential population boom on the rise, and our projections don't show that, they would take a look at our current numbers and go from there. So again, Pentucket's enrollment, I want to say, is like 50 more than us right now, 100 more than us.
But we
pretty
might
locked.
only be certified for 200,000 square feet, but you're gonna have, I mean, you need an office. The 18 to 21 program needs a space.
Yeah,
Those
so
would
that-
all have to be done as
Mhm.
well,
Yep.
even though they're
Yeah.
not certified.
Yeah, so right, so that doesn't mean the building has to be 200,000 square feet only, right? It could end up being 240. I'm saying to make it fully reimbursable, right? The space would, there's a cap on each space, i.e. that, call it 850 per square foot for a classroom. There's a cap on a gym. There's a cap on an auditorium. We get an auditorium in a high school, not in a middle school, not in an elementary. So there's individual caps plus an overall square footage that they'll participate in. So yes, and then there's all, I mean, myriad nuance levels in between that, which again would argue, hey, you can get some reimbursement, so it might be worth it still. Absolutely. Absolutely. Other,
I'll add something, Brian.
Yeah.
You guys are really explaining everything, and thank you, Kevin. You've done a really good job too. I'm a data guy, as Brian knows. I would just, just going through like the Whittier experience that we went through. There was probably like, I think I figured like almost $200 million of cost that wasn't reimbursed, but was forced down the throat. Because of the needs that they needed. So, I mean, we're at 108 million. Now we're talking, if we go into MSBA, it could be 200, 300 million. Not all of it's reimbursable. So if you take, plus and minuses, right? That's our life, is plus and minuses. Now you're telling we have to lose a gym, which I know for a fact you guys love having an extra gym. It provides a lot for, opportunities to our kids. I don't want to lose another gym. Just our classrooms, do we really need to like wipe them all out? I know we all know governance, right? You got to make a formula at some point, but unfortunately formula is never, two things aren't always the same, as I have identical twins and they're not alike each other. And I can tell you that right now, they're not alike. So that's, unfortunately governance has to do it that way, but it doesn't make it right. I just think the school board and the communities, the town managers, elected officials, we all got to be aware that, it's 108 million. We have full control. We're not losing to some things that actually make our school unique. It might be attractive to people. I mean, we all know that we have kids who come here just for drama because our drama department is so good. So I think, sometimes you think of the penny and you forget the thousands. And I just, I really would stress, I know all three elected officials on the school committee, I will be saying to them, like, listen, the MSBA might not be the golden goose that we think it is. And that's what I'm getting at. It's just, we really got to weigh what's best for us. Do we tear down that school? Because, if we tear down that school, where are you putting it? You're putting it in the back. Then you're really you're backing yourself in a corner, basically, if you do that. So I just think we have to weigh all the plus and minuses, and the plan that is put forth. I mean, it's a great plan. It's a very workable plan, good plan. I mean, I'm going to bear a lot of caution with the MSBA, especially what I have seen what went on with Whittier, and it still is going on with Whittier. They're making it more complicated than it actually needs to be. And I just want us all, really think on that. I mean, are they the golden goose? We have to ask ourselves.
It's a good question to ask.
Just to clarify, it's 152 million with the soft cost.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I don't see us doing a project that fits I mean, personally, in my opinion, a renovation addition that fits the MSBA model. I don't see us doing it for under 200 million.
Nope.
No, right? But then the
Or a
question
new
becomes-
building, rather.
Yep.
I think we're at 250 to 300.
Mhm.
I don't disagree at all. Yeah.
I don't want to lose sight of some of the other teaching spaces, and it's 100 square feet in most classrooms, more in our science classrooms, but what it could possibly take to renovate some of those spaces or rethink some of those spaces, I think is a worthwhile exercise if we go forward with this, because I'm not sure just doing tiles and painting walls and ceilings is going to give us what we need in most classroom spaces. And there's benefit to looking at how we might be able to reconfigure at least some of those spaces. And some of that might be because of our enrollment size. We don't need, the exact number of classrooms that we have currently in the building, and we can reconfigure some of them. But we should be thinking about those types of things, because it's not just the science labs that it impacts, it's all classroom spaces.
Patrick, when you say so like a reconfigured classroom space, is it literally space, like a 900 versus a 750 square foot space?
Yeah, I think that
Is
makes a difference. It also is what the shape and configuration of that space is, so that it functions well. So some of it is physical space. Some of the classrooms, even though they look like they're about the same on paper, just feel and function differently.
Yeah.
Some of it feels and functions differently with different furniture, of course, but it's thinking about how we utilize some of that space a little bit differently. And or create some space, because I do think there are places where we could create space.
How many classrooms are you
Again?
referring to?
So I would say the vast majority of our classes, I'd have to give them a count, but I'd say the vast majority of them are undersized. We probably have 20 undersized classrooms, if I'm guessing. Whether we need all 20 of those is a different question. We might need 16 of them, something like that, that are undersized.
And you want to bring them up to this MSBA standard, or just make them larger?
Either. I'm counting high school. I'm not counting middle school.
Yeah.
I think that newer middle school classrooms are actually larger. I could be wrong, but on the drawings, bottom right, those classrooms that were added in 2000, I believe, are larger in general. Yeah. Well, maybe not, I guess, on paper.
I'm counting 22, Matt.
Because when we start touching every classroom, now it doesn't make, kind of changes of where we go, what direction we go.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I guess I would say it's definitely a balance, right? It's absolutely I guess I don't want to prioritize urgency and the fact that on any given day during a windstorm, the roof might blow off, with being short-sighted about potential long-term 50-year solutions, right? We don't want to get stuck in the now without looking ahead. But that the time sensitivity is an incredibly real factor. I guess, and I think that this concept is put together in such a way, like Kevin was saying earlier, with a $10 million design contingency and a $10 million construction contingency, and $5.5 million for FF&E. I mean, I think even those classroom spaces, outside of making them larger, which is major renovation, right? You start moving walls and you've got to recapture space somewhere. I think we can do a lot with the learning spaces with the FF&E, whether it be, you know, interactive panels rather than smart boards, interactive camera or projectors, and learning spaces in general. I think if we're going to redo, the only path forward to get MSBA compliant classrooms is with an MSBA project. And I think that probably pushes us quickly out of a renovation and into a rebuild. And that's not scientific. That's not because Brian's an architect. That's just, I think that's where many districts have tried. And ultimately it's not cost effective to try and renovate. I mean, this is now 50-year-old looking at concrete and brick. That shell is now 50+ years old, and trying to make that into a modern space just becomes cost prohibitive.
What's your projections for growth over the next 50 years for student growth?
Well, I'm lucky if I believe the projections for 5 years, let alone 50. So we're roughly stable, right? We've been in a period of decline for the last 20 years along, with the entire North Shore.
Right.
And I know we keep pointing out Pentucket, but it's, I mean, ironic how literally we've just mimicked over time and stayed roughly the same shape and enrollments. So the 10-year projections show some slight ebbing and flowing, but this is largely, we're a right-sized district between, you know, around the 2,000 to 2,200 student mark, and we're at currently 2,100 and change.
So you don't see a significant growth over the next, say, 10 years. I know Newbury can't really grow unless we put in a water and sewer.
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually the aging in place, right, where people are staying in their homes longer, not selling to, you know, when they're the 60-somethings, 50-somethings, not selling the home, 70-somethings, and selling the home, and, you know, new families with 4 school-age, 3 school-age children moving in. It's either school-age children moving into existing housing stock or new housing stock. Rowley's the only community adding housing stock in any significant way. So then it's really for families, then it's a matter of that changeover and when folks who live there are moving out and other families are moving in. So right, the way the demographers look at it, it's just science. There could absolutely be shifts where folks do start selling homes, estates sell homes, and families are moving in. But, you know, the way the science, the way they do their projections, we're relatively stable, no booms coming.
Thank
and no
you.
further reductions too. Like this campus in that 800 to 900 range. Looks about right.
Thank you.
Brian, real quick, Kevin, do you mind if we geek out for a minute? So,
Sure.
do you think some of those classrooms and stuff, we could change the atmosphere through lighting, textile walls, you know,
Yeah.
adding and taking windows? Could we change the atmosphere with some simple, soft designs?
Yeah, absolutely. New lighting, color, you know, finishes that, you know, reflect light instead of absorb light, having appropriate, you know, shades or blinds, you know, on the window to control glare. All of that is within our control.
Yeah.
Adding windows, I think, is a little bit ambitious, you know, just based on what I think we're trying to do. I think we need to focus on replacing the windows that we have. Adding windows, I think, is a bit more costly. You know, that's a structural alteration, but, you know, maybe there are some spaces that we target for, you know, more light. You know,
Yeah.
once you start really digging in, you know, to the design, and you start looking at it space by space, you know, that may be a conclusion that that we reach, you know. So for example, in this area here, right, where we're putting the 18 to 22 in the TLC program, that may be a place where we want to add some windows, but in general, I think we can make a better classroom environment simply by changing the finishes and the lighting.
Yeah, and then like the courtyard, I call them the smoking areas. Things like that would get, I mean, do you think it's possible or viable to even maybe glaze the top of them and make them into classrooms and make it to where they're more productive space? Because right now they're not extremely productive, and I'm sure, I mean, John can weigh on it, that they're very costly to maintain. And they're also a security risk,
Yeah.
because now you have landscapers coming in through the building, or,
That's a good point.
we might be able to net reduct maintenance if we could add glazing on top of that, make that more of a functional space for the school. Do you think we could add, make classrooms more productive for Patrick and Alan?
I mean, anything is possible. I mean, roofing over those areas with skylights is costly, right? I mean, everything costs money. We haven't attempted to accommodate anything like that in this budget. I think what we did, Carrie, was restoration of what's there, right? There's been obviously there's a lack of maintenance in those courtyard areas, and this budget reflects restoring simply just what is there. But any attempt to try to cover these courtyard areas, what we want to keep in mind is all of these classrooms that face these courtyards, that's their window, right? That's where they get their natural light. And I think putting anything over here, even if it was all glass, it would be some overall reduction maybe in the light in the classrooms. And we'd have to consider things like solar heat gain, which could be considerable.
Yep.
If there's too much glazing, now we've increased the cooling load, and that means more air conditioning, and it can be a slippery slope.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm just bouncing it off you, because you and I
Yeah.
can geek out on it. A lot of people don't think of it this way, but you and I will. Okay, I'm just I'm listening to what Patrick's saying and just making sure, put my 2 cents in to see if we can, engineering wise, maybe achieve what he gets. Because as you guys know, I watch every meeting. There's some real concern with some of the communities of cost right now, because we're getting hit with 2 schools.
Sure.
So I don't want to go into this and fail. I want to go in and win. So I just want to make sure every stone is overturned. Everything is, as Brian and I know Patrick and Alan all wanted to in the school board, but we're gonna have to be careful on this, and we're gonna have to really, really pick the best decision overall for all nets and gains and negatives, so, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Of the 3 internal courtyards, I'd say 2 are well used, 1 is not.
Mhm.
And 2 are well maintained and really beautiful. And one is not. And the one that's not, it's mainly because of how little sunlight it gets, so it's very mossy and we don't have anyone really around it. So
It's this one here, isn't it?
correct.
There's actually 4, right? Because then right where it says new stairs, that's a courtyard.
Yes.
Well,
That's
thank
well
you.
maintained.
Yeah,
And then there's
thank you. So I think 3 of 4. Sorry.
behind the cafeteria is the other one.
Yeah, and I think I guess in the way I'm looking at this, costs, soft costs, contingencies roped in, $150 million. There's a real viable path forward here that if $150 million could be a right number, I think solves a lot of the problems we've identified and probably allows us through contingencies in other areas the ability to address some of the questions and concerns about those spaces that, again, not moving walls and reconfiguring every space, but really being able to rethink those learning environments so that they are more conducive, even if they are 750 and remain 750 square feet. I think that's the question does this number represent again, high level, within the nearest 25 million, a figure that we believe would get us something that's viable. I guess I would say, I feel like this is a viable option. We have other decisions to hear and wait and learn and talk more. But I feel like this is a real possibility of a path without the MSBA. Ideal if the MSBA would somehow partner with us and allow us to kind of capitalize on the work we've done and kind of move forward with this thinking and have them partner with pieces that they might reimburse us for. And right, it gets a little more expensive, but they're paying some of the bills, so it becomes a kind of a net neutral. But I think that's the question is this a viable plan at this point? Because I think the next real decision point is we are or we're not welcomed in to the MSBA. And if it's a no, it's a much clearer decision. Wakefield told me yesterday that they tried 6 times before they got in.
I think this is a viable option,
For the high school or
agree.
middle school?
both.
I'm sorry, high
wait.
school.
Okay, because the middle school was almost that too.
Yeah.
I agree with Patrick, Brian.
Okay. So if we're saying it's a viable option, are there other answers? No, are there other questions we need answered? Other factors that need to be considered for this to be kind of the plan B to have on the shelf for the moment for consideration?
For me, no, there's no other questions that need to be answered at the moment.
Me either.
I don't, I just, I want to make sure, Patrick's concerns are addressed for the classrooms, because obviously that is,
Yeah.
but I think with, Kevin has shown he's really creative. I think we're lighting and some other calming mechanisms that you can do, we can make that classroom feel like in a whole nother classroom. So I think this is, I'm good. No more questions.
I think if we were choosing to go down this path, there'd be design things that we'd want to certainly work out. And some conversations about number of classrooms and classroom needs, both in the middle school and in the high school. And so I think there'd be choices that we would have to make. There are spaces to rethink, reconsider. But I think that's, those are further discussions at a later date.
Makes sense.
For me, I think this fulfills the mission that we were set out to do, right? We had to identify sort of the high level needs that we've been hearing all along and figure out an option. I have to say, as much as that number is kind of scary high, it's lower than I expected it to be before we got here today. I was thinking we were probably going to be closer to 200 million. So I don't want to say it's a good surprise, but I mean, it's lower than what I was expecting. I think, not only does Patrick's needs need to be addressed down the road if this is going to be something that we go along with, and it's always going to be compromised, right? So it might not be every one of Patrick's needs, but
We should call them needs that Patrick's has raised
needs
rather than
that Patrick
Patrick's
has raised. Okay.
I mean, I'll take it, but needs of the high school, needs of the middle school, yeah.
But I think also, as you go through this process, even if it's not a full MSBA process, you're going to have to invite community involvement and community feedback, because when it comes right down to it, this is my belief at least, I don't believe there is, that it has to be under this number, because you can be under that number, and if it doesn't fulfill what the community is looking for, it's still a failed project. And if it's over that number, people are sometimes going to look at it and say, you know what, it's worth the cost. And you're always, it's going down to the individual voter when it comes time to make that vote. But you have to be listening to people and making sure that you have an understanding of, the basics that we have been hearing for I mean, I've been on the committee for, I don't know how, a long time now, almost, yeah, 10 years. So the entire time that I've been on the committee, plus even before when my kids were in school, before I was originally elected, you're hearing these things the whole time. So I think we've addressed those. It's just, kind of what might lie below the surface that we didn't identify that needs to be taken account down the road. But I mean, I think like Brian said, there are things in here. I'm personally uncomfortable with the way that the stadium is labeled, because it looks like it's redoing the stadium when we know what it needs is a resurface. Like, it's the things that we've been saying from the beginning, right? The turf only, that turf sheeting only lasts so long, right? It needs to be redone at some point. This is not a redo of the stadium. This is replacing those materials that have worn over time as expected. But if that is in fact more than what that's going to cost, which is more than what we were given to consider, then maybe that comes down a little, but something else gets addressed someplace else. I know with Pine Grove, we were making those decisions all along the way through the MSBA process. The classic one I think is a dehumidification system in the classroom versus AC in the classroom. And that was a long drawn out conversation. And I think, it's worth having those conversations, even if you're not going through the MSBA process. So I definitely timely, like, we need to keep this short, but I think we need to weigh and hear from the community far more than we have. But for this subcommittee and the work that we were supposed to do here, I feel like we fulfilled that to go on to the next step and see what comes out of the MSBA, and then kind of weigh what we have here versus what we believe we know about an MSBA project to make a decision on how to move forward.
Yeah, I think a key question will be, and this is a school committee, town officials, DCC discussion. Is there a number that we would say makes a project viable to a non-MSBA pathway, right? Is 150 million the right number? And if it is, then to say, okay, let's as a committee, through stabilization otherwise, keep committing resources to go down this path to say the number cannot exceed, and this is not a Brian proposal, just for this, it cannot exceed $150 million. That is the absolute maximum. We would love to see it lower than that. And then we go down the process of actually designing and value engineering and addressing the needs with a not to exceed kind of project cap. But if the number is 75, we shouldn't keep spending money thinking about this if that's where town officials are.
Right.
Brian, I can speak for me. You're close to the number I was thinking, because I was with Narissa. I thought around 200 million.
Yeah.
And you're under that. So I was comfortable around 200 because I, just hearing what Whittier, listen to some of the Newburyport, the Amesbury, talking to other community members outside of Triton. I thought we're going to be around 200, and now we're at 150. And we achieved security. We achieved our 4 main goals. And I know it would be a tough sale, but at the end of the day, if the MSBA forces us to spend 175 million because of the needs they always create, or if we lose a gym and we lose things that we are used to having with us, I think you're close to the number that I was say we could probably start asking and start. I mean, the biggest thing is going to be what it always is. We all know what the breakdown, what's the breakdown to each community.
Yep.
That's going to be in line where most of the fight's going to be. I don't think it's going to be the overall number. I think it's going to be the fight of what each community is responsible for.
Well, that's driven by the agreement.
It is, but that's how. At least.
But you mean like literally, like voter by voter, like what it would mean to the voter, not portion by town, but just the reality of knowing your constituents. What do you think people would absorb? For the knowledge of what Narissa was talking about, fixing the things that for the decade she's been on the committee, she's been hearing the same things. We need to address this.
It's going to be different in each community, but I can tell you, You know, no one wants to hear $150 million bill, but just what and you know, you can talk to their other members tonight at the DCC meeting, but what I hear is you're close. What we're gonna achieve, you're close, is what I hear.
Well, I mean, what's the alternative? Okay, we can't have a school that collapses.
Yeah. And I think, you know, what I was coming into this with, and again, I've had a few more conversations with Kevin along the way here as these numbers were generated, but the construction, right? We're adding square footage, which I could see being a bone of contention with some people saying, wait a minute, what? I thought we had too much space. But I think the cost of those spaces is not a major contributing factor. Could those change as we get into actually designing, right? Actually designing versus this concept? Of course. But I think this has been fruitful to figure out what that number is. And then, right, and I don't know this exactly how the mechanisms work, but my understanding is once you're into the core program with the MSBA, right, you've passed the highest test. It's the biggest, largest program, and there's loopholes. But are there pathways where they would say, all right, so if we're going to pull out of the core, we'll start down that process, and maybe it ends up being that it's just an accelerated repair program that we tap into and we're able to do the building envelope. So windows, roofs, and doors end up being a partnership with the MSBA through that program. And then we're partnering with the with National Grid and other because of energy incentives and heating and cooling and lighting. And all of a sudden we've got 15 million there and 15 million through accelerated repair. And we've got 30 million contributed and the bill is 120 and we're still doing this. So again, I'm talking in way big round figures. But I think there's so many, right? The challenge will be there's so many possibilities moving forward if the MSBA says yes. That there's that first step is if they say yes, before we say yes to them, there's a lot of question to ask of them and their people to kind of figure out a path forward. So again, just timeline, I'll get a call. This is quiet call. First week of December, officially, I can let you know. We can, talk through, the committee will know. We can talk internally. It's officially happens Friday, the 13th of December, whether we're welcomed in or not. Committee would discuss in January. We would choose, historically, it's one of the 3 spring meetings, which I believe on the schedule I saw is April, May, and June of 25. We would pick one of those meetings to be welcomed into the feasibility phase, which kicks off that 9-month, 270-day window of getting your school committee, not a school committee, we got one of those, we're all set. A building committee established, all those roles, funding for feasibility, all of those things. So that would be the April, May, or June meeting where we would say to them, yes, we want to accept that invitation. So
Ryan, I've got to fly.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right.
So I would say, I feel like we accomplished, I don't want to cut this short if there are other thoughts, but I feel like we accomplished what the purpose was. I can certainly work with Kevin on, like Narissa, you brought up the kind of the stadium and how that's coded in there before this becomes an official document that the committee considers. But I feel like this is like I'm a judge and you're in jury duty. I feel like I can release you. You've done a nice job.
Well, I think a lot of we can talk about tonight too, Brian.
Yep, absolutely. We'll keep that conversation. Yeah, this is right. We've only just begun.
Yeah.
So I'll continue to work with Kevin and Julia and kind of tightening this up and kind of doing some refinements. And I know as far as subcommittee, Matt, Narissa, Caitlin, are there other thoughts, other things you wanted to talk about as a subcommittee? Other questions for Kevin or Julia or?
No, just on the next agenda item, are we going to communicate this to the public? I don't know that I would necessarily put this out yet.
No, okay, Brian's thinking. My thought was nothing's communicated to the public. Certainly these are public meetings. They can find them. They can find this. It's different seeing it on this versus something where we push it out. I think it's a discussion with the school committee first. Will on the 11th is the school committee meeting, December 11th. We won't be able to officially hold a discussion, but I'm sure there will be some discussion, right? About, you know, this in some capacity. The first formal discussion would be January, forgetting the date, 8th. I believe it's Wednesday, the 8th. And that's where I would say the committee is considering this publicly with a yes or no from the MSBA.
I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here, and maybe not everybody has to hang out for this, because I don't think it's honestly a Kevin and Julia thing. But
So,
the MSBA is gonna communicate their decision. I think we need to have a communication prepared as well.
I agree with Narissa. I just think I mean, to an extent, I would prefer to over communicate with the community where this is involved, because we've seen what can happen with perceptions if people feel like we've withheld or kind of. So even though you're saying this is public and they can find it, I would just prefer to have something ready.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess I just always worry, even though we're doing our best to be transparent, I would like to make it obvious that we're doing our best to be
Yeah,
transparent.
no, I agree. I definitely don't disagree with that. I would say, do we need Kevin and Julia? Is this more, are we going into politics now? You both are welcome to stay, but
Okay. It's okay. We can sign off. It looks like Neil has a question he
Yes.
wants to ask, but
No,
if we don't see this group together in the near future, it's been a real pleasure. It's been a very, very satisfying project for us to work on. We're hopeful. We really want to see this happen, for the district. So I think this could be a wonderful project. So thanks for the opportunity.
thank you,
Yeah.
Kevin. And I will certainly be
Yeah,
in touch.
thank you.
With Julia. All right.
Okay.
Neil, was your
Thank you.
question for Kevin or Julia?
neither. The chat was disabled. I just want to let you know I have to run to another meeting.
Oh, okay. Very good.
All right.
Ronnie,
Thank
I'd
you.
just like to
Bye now.
add, good job, Kevin.
Bye-bye.
You did a really good
Thank
design.
you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very
both.
much. Yeah,
thank you,
bye.
Kevin.
You're welcome. Bye.
So as far as communication, I guess, I think it's what we're communicating. 100% agree. The last thing you just were saying, Caitlin, about don't want to be accused of under communicating. I would much rather over communicate. I was specifically thinking about this plan. I agree. I think we have to have a communication ready after when that vote happens. And it would be right. So this has happened and this is what's next. I wouldn't want to be sharing this plan before the school committee discusses it. I just want to look at the real date, right? Isn't it January 8th? It's January 8th is the regular school committee. But to have a communication ready to go the afternoon of Friday the 13th, maybe we'll send it on Monday the 15th, because I don't want to send anything on Friday the 13th. Right, but just to have here's what we've been doing, here's the decision of the MSBA, the committee will be considering a plan B. Look for that posted agenda for January 8th. You'll see that, as well as, any MSBA process. Is that what you were thinking? Or were you talking specifically, either or any of you, about communicating about this plan specifically?
Does it make sense to present this plan at the next school committee meeting as part of the update? High level, not a great detail.
I hadn't thought about that.
I think it makes sense. Just my 2 cents. Not detail at all, just coming in with we have identified these needs. We have a plan that could, to model off of, right? This isn't the plan.
So not this PDF document. You're saying not that.
Right.
Just a report, a communication about.
Yep.
Okay.
We have a model that potentially fits that. So we did an estimate on it. This is the ballpark on the estimate. This is what we'll be facing moving forward, and sort of discussing as a ballpark plan B cost. But I guess what I don't want to happen is, part of it is, Caitlin, I want to over communicate, but also I don't want to have the MSBA is notorious about like shouting their approval from the rooftops and then having the local newspapers pick it up. And my concern is if we ever want to consider a plan B, if we are accepted, we're basically that decision gets pre-decided for us unless we're sort of ahead of that communication, because all the people will hear were you're accepted by the MSBA, and that will become the de facto process moving forward. Whereas if we're out in front of that saying, yeah, we were accepted, decisions of, still kind of yet to be made about what direction we're going because we've been working in these two different ways. Or conversely, we weren't accepted, but we've been working on plan B and we're going to be continuing to do that. And you're going to be hearing more about it. This is not the end. This is not going to be like past years where we've just said, okay, we'll apply again in April. We've been doing this work. We have options to look at, and this is what you can expect.
And so if we present it at the next meeting, you don't want to present the budget, or you just don't want to present the detailed budget?
I think just detail. What I don't want to have is people devolving into what,
Well,
no
yeah.
offense to the group here, but what happens to Courtyard 1? Right? The school committee should not be going to that level, right? That's is our model good? That, to Mike's point, like, is our model good? Is it fulfilling, kind of the obligations or the things that we want it to fulfill? But the reality is that, there are many more steps before you have a true plan. And I think we have to acknowledge that and just say, we modeled something. It meets the major needs that we identified. Here's the ballpark cost that we're going to be using as an estimate for comparison purposes.
I would agree with that. And also, once you put out a PDF document, you somehow own that for life, no matter how many versions you put out after, and whatever you say, document 7.1 will be the only thing that exists, even if document 15.6 comes out. So I would not want to share the actual PDF document. I agree, just saying like we have a plan B, a non-MSB plan, not even say plan B, but like a non-MSB plan to move forward. It fits these 4 major issues that were, brought up, and we await further detail and decision. I don't know. I think just letting people know we're working on it.
Yeah.
We're not just sitting back and waiting. We have input and we're moving forward even in this waiting period.
But
I love all of that. The only thing I worry about is the timing. Like, I wish the school committee was meeting on the 18th rather than the 11th, because you have to talk in complete hypotheticals on the 11th. Because the decision hasn't been approved yet. So again, are you going to get in trouble? Who's going to tell on you? But it's right. Technically, you're not allowed to talk about it publicly.
We're only talking about plan B.
Yes, I just think it's plan B. I don't think you avoid the MSBA discussion talking about just plan B, right? Versus being able to say, we now have a decision to make. It's plan B or the MSBA, or we only have one option. It is only plan B.
But we're doing a facilities update.
Yeah.
We're just talking about plan B. That's it. MSBA doesn't even need to come up.
We don't know.
I mean, my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll all know by that point, but
We haven't
We
used
won't
anything
know,
other
Brian.
than plan B.
Maybe you don't tell us by that point. Tell us after the meeting.
Yeah.
yeah, because none of you be texting me going, oh my God, I can't wait any longer. Tell me.
Nobody knows. No, I mean, even if we know, right? It's not a thing, I mean, look at Whittier, where, Bruce Tarr was up there kind of advising them not to accept him in the meeting, even with a recommendation on the table. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. I'm with Matt. I was envisioning it like this is where the facilities subcommittee is at. Yep. Kind of here's the update. We've gotten to the point that we said we would get to by this meeting. Here's where we're at. We're waiting on an MSBA decision. This is where the subcommittee landed as far as, kind of the product of the work up until this point. in rough figures, nothing specific. And you know, here's the schedule moving forward. Maybe it's a combo, you know, Matt and Linda update where she's going back over the schedule so that the other committee members have it in their heads to say, you know, okay, well, I need to come in having done my research on January 8th.
The only thing I worry about with the estimate is if we give the number, we don't give the breakdown, I guess it's gonna happen anyway. It's immediately gonna be compared to the facilities assessment,
That's fine.
immediately.
But the facilities assessment didn't meet the needs. I think that's where
I know that and you know that, and most people know that.
That's fine.
And again, I think if you're talking about an update to the committee that would be similar to the update that we'd be giving the community, then I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's very doable. Like even to your point, Matt, right? Many, even like I'm thinking of the narrative of the message. Sorry for the long-winded message, but here's a long update, and you can give a verbally, whether it's Matt or Linda or me or anyone here, providing that update to say, right, this all started. Remember 2019, right? This started with a $62 million repair. This has turned into a renovation update of the entire campus, a rethinking of the campus, bringing this campus forward with a 50-year solution, and the price tag's now in the vicinity of 150 million. We have decisions to make in the future. MSBA, non-MSBA, that might be made for us. So I think that's a great communication to have, and I think it points all eyes then to January. And maybe you have a bunch of people listening to your school committee meeting in January, and awesome, right? We start to get people engaged in this discussion, and hearing the reasoning for and for not moving forward with whatever is decided. So yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And I would only add that you guys don't stay in the same bubble and make Whittier's mistake.
Yeah.
Make sure you go to select board meetings.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people do not watch the school board committee meeting, but they watch every single select board meeting.
So do you think we should do that before we make a decision in January?
I would start discussing as soon as possible. I would have Brian, Narissa, Caitlin, whoever you guys decide, but I could put you on the agenda. We just did I can't do it for Monday, but you can go on the agenda wherever you guys want. So
I would think we would want to present it to the school committee first and then hit the.
Correct. And
yeah, but you the plan B I'm talking about. You guys are talking to MSBA, but if you guys are going to want to talk about the plan B, you got to get the plan B out to the community, not just the school board committee.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say is don't look at January as a decision point for you all. That's your first opportunity to discuss. And you have lots of meetings in January and February and March to add this as a discussion point. The earliest you would have to answer the MSBA is April. I got to go back and look. Last year, 2 years ago was March, but I'm pretty sure it's April, May, and June are the 3 spring MSBA board meetings. So we get to choose one of those meetings to give them the answer. Obviously, time is of the essence. If we can answer them in April, awesome. But that gives you January, February, and March to make those decisions. I think some of those are DCC meetings. Those are us going to select board meetings because you have an audience there. Those are DCC meetings. That's a different audience. Hopefully we could maybe even get, like I was saying, Diane Sullivan and Mary Piketty out to answer those questions like, is there a path or are we spinning our wheels to consider? You said yes to us, but before we say yes, is there a path where we say to you, we know we don't want to knock down rebuild. We know there's portions of this building that aren't going to meet the MSBA specs and they're not going to be reimbursable. Is it worth partnering? Maybe they say no, right? And so I think those discussions we have 3 months to have. But that would be a lot to what you're all talking about, real nuts and bolts discussions about what a plan B, whether it's viable. The January is here's the proposal. I think you mentioned a number like we're talking about. This is kind of morphed nicely, right? It was 62 for a fix. Now it's 150 for a renovation ballpark. We'll give more detail in January when we know from the MSBA as a first point in the discussion. And then we can confirm the exact MSBA dates that we would be giving them. I like that plan.
Okay, so the plan is to give an update at the next school committee meeting and we'll go from there.
Yes.
Which I'm sure we're gonna talk about it again tonight anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I think we, right, this is a public discussion, so we have that discussion tonight, and we're not speaking out of turn to have that discussion with town officials tonight. Where we landed, Linda,
She's off.
where'd she go? Okay, I was gonna say, I just saw her. Did she go?
I thought
yeah,
she
she's
did, yeah.
been- She might have been. Yeah, she's not here anymore. But right, there's no under the cover of darkness, so we can have this discussion, what we've been discussing. And then formal report. And we can, Matt, Narissa and Caitlin, we can talk about, you tell me what part you want me to do in that and what you want to draft or whatever, but I think that's a report, an official report from this committee on progress with a formal report with this proposal at the January 8th meeting.
Can
Okay,
you fix the turf field and the track?
I will most definitely, there's a couple other weird, I gotta go back, I had marked it up. There's a couple other weird little quirkisms. So if there's other things you, like the three of you as the committee members, if you feel like, ooh, I don't like how that sounds. Or if there's something missing, shoot me an email. Cause that, yeah, I mean, we know, I wanna say the carpet is like 750,000. If I think it was like 600 a handful of years ago.
But that was without yeah, it had the soft costs in it before, yeah. Sorry.
Well, that, and then like I'm saying from when we did just the carpet, because everything is still intact, right? If you take that field away, it's a big concrete curb filled with drainage and everything, and the drainage is still good and intact. It's just pulling the carpet, suck up the crumb rubber and sand, put a new carpet down, new crumb rubber. And I want to say it was 600,000-700,000. So round that up to 750 a few years later. And I want to say that the track was like 600 to scrape and resurface and everything.
I got a price recently to do the track. Just a ballpark estimate. It was like 200, over 200.
And that was
That was a rubber, just to recoat the whole rubber.
and that was pulling up all of the under.
Yeah. No, not the asphalt, but the rubber itself. Yeah.
Itself was two. Okay. Yeah. Estimates were like 450 for that. And like because there's like different levels, like, and this is where I have to go back to the details. There's like a first coating, which is the expensive one, and then an overcoating, and then the color, like the paint and all that. So all that to say, yes, those numbers are way high. I want to carry 4.5 million because
I was going to say that. Yeah,
other things.
Don't take that out.
Right, softball field, right? Like, but
Yeah,
let's
there's
call
a
it
lot,
a million on the turf, 500,000 on the track, 3.5 for other, field and updates. I think the tennis courts are also higher than, I think.
I would
Yes.
say,
Much
I
higher,
would,
yeah.
I would say on the athletic part of what you guys are discussing, limit what you are earmarking the money to.
Yeah.
Because I could tell you, Brian, Patrick, John, anyone know, all the school board, you guys all know, the minute you start putting numbers on, oh, the field, well,
What
the
about
football
us?
field was just, redone 10 years ago. What about this? And the water bottoms? I would caution you on exactly, just say 4.5 million
Was
updates
athletics.
on athletic fields. I would not put a number on it because you're gonna get people arguing with each other. And, I had to quiet down people for the past 4 years over things. And it's just rightfully so on some of it, they're not right on some. So, I would like to see, increasing ADA, accessibility in the backfields. I mean, that's not on there. I mean, I was actually talking to John, I think last week, right, John, when I was saying if we grind their asphalt out of their parking lots, let's reuse it and make paths to the backfields with the reused asphalt and make it more ADA accessibility and stuff. There's things we could do. So I would just make it a broad, update athletic facility.
$5 million. Yeah.
Yep. I would not get it too poignant.
At the Hatfield's fighting with the McCoys.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was just confirming. So on the MSBA site, there's a Friday, December 13th, and there's a February meeting, and I believe that's not a time we'd be able to be welcomed in. It's April 30th, May 3rd, May 28th, and June 25th. So I believe we have until April 30th to have all those, what are we going to do discussions? So we literally have all of January, February, March, and April to make that determination. So that gives us, if it's happening on April 30th, I'm sure we have to tell them a week before or whatever, you know, and you have to have meetings and all that, but we have at least
I think it
3
takes
full
more
months.
time than that, Brian, because I'm pretty sure we have to have a proposed building committee to come to that, which,
No.
no?
That's to be welcomed in. That's to be welcomed from feasibility into schematic. So this is
No.
just to be welcomed into feasibility. The
We had a
acceptance.
building committee through feasibility.
Right. So this is the April, May, or June is when we get welcomed into feasibility. The vote on the 13th is to welcome us. The acceptance starts at the April, May, or June meeting.
Okay.
The 270-day window starts when we accept it at a meeting. That would be the April, May, or June meeting.
Okay.
It doesn't start in December, that 9-month window.
Okay. The only thing I was gonna say is, as far as, you know, the language on the document is that I had the same initial question Matt did, where's the wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah.
Because that's not a small item. I think that needs to be just noted in there.
Called out, yeah.
It doesn't need a number next to it. It just needs to, you know, in the notes somewhere, say that that's there, because otherwise people are gonna think that it's not included.
Yeah, and honestly, I'd rather call it out separately with a number. And again, these are assuming kind of worst case scenarios with contingencies and such. So if we said, you know, working with John, we're going to need to replace all of the pumps and mechanicals, right? Tanks are okay, but you know, we just replace one of the pipes connecting because it got a little clogged, right? But is it $1 million of work we know we have to do? Not pouring a new field over on Center Street or any of that. But so, yeah, those were 2 that stuck out to me, was the fields, the way he coded that from our discussion yesterday, and then the wastewater treatment plant. Okay. Just write myself more notes. Okay. Then I think we're good for today.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn? Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, Marissa?
Yep.
Caitlin?
Yep.
And I'm a yes. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Kitty.
Thank you.